Pathfounder, ladies and gentlemen, from Dfinity. Crown of applause. Have a seat. That's fine. Thank you. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.
It's always been my dream to speak to the Lady Gaga of the internet.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Which is what your Twitter handle says.
It is, yeah.
Why is that?
That's a more recent development. I kind of started wearing funny hats for a little while. I've since stopped, but okay. I haven't actually updated my
You need to change the profile.
Twitter handle, yeah, you're right.
You don't look very Lady Gaga-esque right now. Right. Let's be serious for a second. Now, Dfinity. This is building a decentralized cloud. There's now, obviously, for obvious reasons, people are talking about how you might create a decentralized AWS, a protocol that effectively compete with Amazon's cloud infrastructure. But that's quite a tall order, isn't it?
Well, not entirely. I mean, what we've seen in blockchain and this whole idea of world computers for the last 3 years really has been this drive toward a general purpose Turing complete or a blockchain that can run arbitrary scripts, not necessarily Turing complete, obviously. And we've made tremendous strides. There's a lot of frustration around Ethereum scaling challenges, but that's just really indicative of the early stage that we're in, and over time we'll find solutions to these problems, and the performance of blockchain-based world computers will eventually improve. And at Dfinity, we think we have a roadmap, at least a conceptual roadmap, that will allow us to achieve the required performance for us to offer competitive solutions to AWS for specific business logic kind of use cases.
Whereabouts are you at the moment? What's the roadmap?
Well, again, this isn't formalized, but we're about to launch our testnet, and that will give us very high scale. That'll give us very high throughput and rapid transaction finality. At about 7 seconds. We can push that to 1 second. So if you think that a transaction is really a write operation or a state transition in a database, we also have the ability to run more complex computations than Ethereum does in its current state, using WebAssembly, which is an in-browser execution engine that was co-developed by Google, Microsoft, Apple and the Mozilla Foundation.
In-browser on the client side, or?
Yes, in-browser on the client side. The idea is, and I mean it comes into this kind of buzz phraseology of Cloud 3, the idea is that a piece of software can be entirely stored in a cloud environment and served to the client when they open the application. And so you've got the single instance of an application that might be stored in a decentralized cloud or in a legacy cloud that is always up to date and carries with it the user's user profile and data, etc.
Running inside the browser.
Running inside the browser.
Right.
Browser, exactly.
Right. Now you. What about? Tell us a bit more about sort of how the resilience, the scaling aspect of this. Still the scaling first.
Well, one of the unique things about Dfinity is that we have the ability to create unmanipulable, deterministic, unpredictable randomness. And we do that using it's not a complex scheme, but it might be a little bit much to describe without a slideshow. But essentially, we can reliably and very cheaply produce randomness. And sourcing randomness is one of the biggest challenges that...
Just unpack that a little bit more for everyone.
So randomness, unpack the...
What do you actually mean?
By randomness. So we can actually create an unpredictable variable. That means that we can select, say, in the case of Dfinity, we can select a notarization committee that is responsible for determining the validity of state transitions on the network itself. So, if or in the blockchain. So, if what that allows us to do is it means that we don't need to run proof of work, which consumes as much energy as Ireland.
I see.
We can just we can get a leader group without having to go through any of that effort, and with actually far greater security.
I see. So, thank you. So the proof of work, so you're proof of stake, are you? Or
no.
Not?
So we are bonded validator. So a proof of stake implies that you're selecting a network leader based on the amount of, say, arbitrary value tokens that a number of actors have put into a holding. Whereas what we have is a system where you post a bond and then you're randomly selected. Rather than based purely on randomness. It's not based on the size of the bond. So what that means is you can have a more decentralized network than you would if you were relying purely on selecting participants based on their wealth, essentially.
Okay, resilience.
Well, it's a blockchain system, and if you've got an effective decentralized security network, you have a very resilient, highly replicated system, and it's all of these components that we've been talking about for so long, all of these qualities we've been talking about for so long in blockchain. It's really just taken time to refine them and get them into a position where they can be used for real world applications.
Governance.
Governance is fundamental because, as we've seen with the Bitcoin Cash fork and the DAO hard fork with Ethereum, a small disagreement in the user base can completely fracture the community, and we need to find a way to move forward without these kind of disagreements being so divisive. And so we have a built-in governance system that is essentially an opaque liquid democracy that allows an individual, if they don't want to participate in a vote because they either don't have time or they don't have the expertise to, they can delegate their vote to another actor. And one of the really interesting things is we can have these machine learning actors that make tiny tweaks to the protocol, continually updating it over time, and we can all rely on them to not behave in a Byzantine or an unwanted fashion, and we can also build in the ability to roll back their actions. And so, by having this built-in governance, we can both keep the community from fracturing, but we can also optimize the protocol using all kinds of techniques.
Now you've raised. I know that you're not the founder, but you are a spokesperson. But and you've raised quite a lot of money, $61 million from Andreessen Horowitz and Polychain. In fact, it was Andreessen Horowitz's first token that they bought.
First token only. We didn't actually raise 61. We raised 21.
Oh, right.
And 40 million was set aside for an ecosystem fund to fund development on the platform.
I see. And then apparently there's some news that you guys are going to be doing a $350 million.
No, it's not true. It's not true.
Was that not true?
It's totally not true.
Okay, so
it's just it's the internet,
something in ICO drops tweeted a table. Whoever these people are.
Yeah, it was a table that they made up themselves. It's not based on based on reality
this
at all.
New form of journalism, apparently.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Fake news.
Yeah, if only we were.
Do you guys? What do you think about all of that? All of that world?
It's frustrating. I don't like it at all. I mean, I've been in blockchain since 2013, and we've watched this whole environment reach fever pitch.
Yeah.
To the point where people are just desperate for information. They're desperate for an opportunity to throw money at any project, and And it's completely counterproductive. It's not...
Possibly some weird things going on behind the background there somewhere.
It's,
and then you get all these fake sites, don't you?
Yeah.
We're actually going to build some time in now from here on to questions for everyone. If anyone has a quick question about how these guys are going to take on AWS with a blockchain platform, anyone got a question?
Well,
Quick one, right there.
Okay,
Got one right there.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you. Hi, Piers Ridyard, Radix. Just the sort of the whole AWS idea, really interesting one. What are you going to build first for developers to make it easier for developers to build on your platform?
we'll launch with an IDE so that so that developers both have the tools. Of course, we're using WebAssembly, so we're going to develop the compilers that we need for developers to develop in languages that we deem to be the most important initially. Obviously, other projects are developing WebAssembly compilers as well. But we'll also produce an IDE that allows developers to build for Dfinity. But
Carry on.
oh yeah, but we're not going to launch until the end of the year or early next year. So we're a little bit off, but we do have a testnet coming up, and with that we'll start experimenting and polling the community and asking them what they'd like.
Any other questions? Okay, great. I really appreciate you coming in, Arthur.
Oh,
thank you very much. Cheers. Thank you.